The space station called Harmony's Edge floated silently above a gray moon. Inside, diplomats from 47 different species gathered for the annual Peace Summit. The station was huge, with different sections for different types of aliens. Some areas had heavy gravity for the strong ones. Other areas had light gravity for the flying ones. Some rooms were hot. Others were freezing cold. It was a place where everyone tried to get along, even when they were very different. Daehyun walked through the main hall with a cup of coffee in his hand. He was a human diplomat from Earth, but he did not look like the serious type. His hair was messy, and he wore a smile that made him look friendly. Before becoming a diplomat, he had been a veterinarian who studied alien animals. He loved creatures of all kinds, which is why he volunteered to come to this summit. Next to him walked Haejin, a human security officer. She was always alert, always watching. Her hand stayed close to the small weapon on her belt, and her eyes scanned every corner of the room. She trusted nothing in space. "This place is amazing," Daehyun said, looking up at the tall ceiling. Strange plants from different worlds grew along the walls. Lights of many colors glowed softly. "Have you seen the Velthar delegates? They look like giant praying mantises." "Beautiful." Haejin rolled her eyes. "Daehyun, we are here to work, not to admire bugs. They are not bugs. They are intelligent beings with complex social structures," he said with a grin. "Also, they are very polite." The main ceremony was about to begin. Hundreds of aliens filled the great hall. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 4, some on 6. Some floated in the air. Some slithered on the ground. The noise was incredible. Clicks, whistles, roars, and hums mixed together in a strange symphony. Daehyun took his seat in the human section. He looked around with wide, curious eyes. He had read about all these species, but seeing them in person was different. It was wonderful. Then the room went silent. Everyone stopped talking at once. Even the air seemed to freeze. Daehyun looked around, confused. What was happening? "They are here," Haejin whispered. Her face had gone pale. "Who?" Daehyun asked. "The Vryn." Daehyun had heard of them, of course. The Vryn were apex predators from a distant world. They were warriors, hunters, and had a reputation for being extremely dangerous. For decades, they had refused to join the Galactic Coalition. They said other species were too weak, too soft. But this year, something had changed. They agreed to send delegates to the summit. The massive doors at the end of the hall opened slowly. A cold mist rolled into the room. Then, they appeared. The Vryn were enormous. Each one stood at least 3 meters tall. They walked on 4 powerful legs, with 2 more limbs that could be used as arms or for running. Their bodies were covered in black scales that looked like polished stone. Sharp spikes ran down their spines. Their eyes glowed amber, like fire in the darkness. Their mouths were filled with teeth, designed for tearing meat. 3 Vryn entered the hall, but everyone only looked at the one in front. He was the largest, the most decorated with scars and metal bands. His scales were darker than the others, almost like the void of space. His amber eyes swept across the room, like a predator, surveying prey. This was Korath, the greatest warrior of the Vryn. All around the hall, aliens began to move. Some species stood up and backed away slowly. Others activated personal shields. A few ran for the exits. The insectoid Velthar delegates folded their limbs close to their bodies, trying to look smaller. The bird-like Rilmoth security forces drew their weapons but did not aim them. Clearly terrified, Daehyun watched all of this with confusion. "Why is everyone freaking out?" he whispered to Haejin. "Because those things could kill everyone in this room in under a minute," Haejin hissed back. Korath walked forward slowly. Each step was heavy and deliberate. His claws clicked on the metal floor. His breathing was deep and rumbling. He reached the center of the hall where all the delegates were supposed to give their opening greetings. Then Korath stopped. His massive head turned slowly, scanning the crowd. His glowing eyes moved from one section to another, searching, looking for something. His gaze landed on the human section, on Daehyun. The great predator stared directly at him. Those amber eyes locked onto Daehyun's face and did not move. Korath's head tilted slightly to one side. His nostrils flared, taking in scent from across the room. Around the hall, aliens began to panic again. The Velthar ambassador stood up quickly. "Emergency protocol," he said in a clicking voice. "All delegates to secure zones immediately." Species began evacuating their sections. The bird-like captain of station security, Real Moth, was shouting orders into a communication device. "We need barriers between the Vryn and all other delegates. Now." But Daehyun just sat there, looking at Korath. The massive predator was still staring at him. His head was still tilted in that curious way. "Ah," Daehyun said softly. "He looks like a big dog." Haejin grabbed his arm hard. "Daehyun, we need to leave. Right now." "Why?" "He is just looking." "That is not just looking. That is the mate selection stare." Daehyun blinked. "The... what?" "The Vryn choose their mates by staring at them like that. It is in every first contact file we have on them. When a Vryn looks at something that way, it means they have chosen it for bonding. B. 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 Daehyun looked back at Korath. The predator was still staring. Now his tail was moving slowly from side to side. Daehyun smiled and waved at him. Korath's eyes seemed to brighten. His mouth opened slightly, showing all those terrible teeth. But to Daehyun, it looked like a smile. "See? Friendly," Daehyun said. Haejin looked like she might scream. Around them, the hall was emptying fast. Security barriers were rising from the floor, creating walls between different sections. Alarms were starting to sound. Red lights flashed. The Vryn delegates with Korath tried to approach him. They made low growling sounds, clearly trying to communicate. But Korath ignored them completely. His eyes never left Daehyun. "Sir, we must evacuate you immediately," a security officer said, running up to Daehyun. He was a real moth, his feathers puffed up in fear. "I am fine here," Daehyun said calmly. "No, you are not fine. The Vryn has chosen you." "Not really," Daehyun admitted. Haejin pulled him to his feet. "It means he wants you as his mate. And in Vryn culture, once they choose, they do not give up. Ever. They will fight anything that gets between them and their choice. They will tear apart ships, stations, planets, if they have to." Daehyun looked at Korath again. The great predator took one step forward. The security barriers sparked and hummed, but they held. Korath pressed one massive claw against the barrier, testing it. His eyes never left Daehyun. "He just seems curious," Daehyun said. "Look at how he tilts his head. That is what dogs do when they are trying to understand something. That is not a dog. That is a murder machine with scales." But Daehyun was already walking toward the barrier. Haejin tried to grab him, but he moved too quickly. Other security officers shouted warnings. Somewhere, alarms got louder. Daehyun stopped right in front of the barrier, only a few meters from Korath. The predator was so much bigger up close. His scales reflected the red emergency lights. His breathing sounded like distant thunder. "Hello there," Daehyun said softly, the way he used to talk to scared animals at his clinic. "You are a handsome boy, are you not?" Korath's eyes widened. His mouth closed. The aggressive posture softened slightly. He pressed closer to the barrier, and a deep, rumbling sound came from his chest. Every alien in the room recognized that sound. It was the sound a Vryn made before attacking. It was the last thing prey ever heard. But Daehyun smiled. "Oh, you can purr? What a good boy." And that was when the entire galaxy realized humanity had no idea what they were dealing with. The station went into full lockdown within minutes. Emergency protocols designed for exactly this kind of situation kicked into action. Heavy blast doors sealed off entire sections. Security drones filled the hallways. Every species retreated to their designated safe zones, protected by thick walls and energy shields. Everyone except Dae-hyun. He sat in a small observation room with windows looking into the main hall. Haejin stood guard at the door, her weapon drawn, though she knew it would be useless against a Vryn. Other human staff members rushed around, pulling up files and making urgent calls back to Earth. On the other side of the glass, Korath prowled back and forth. The other two, Vryn, had been moved to a different section, but Korath refused to leave. He stayed in the main hall, his glowing eyes always finding Dae-hyun through the windows. His tail swept back and forth. His claws scraped the floor, leaving deep marks in the metal. Mireille, the human cultural attaché, burst into the room with a tablet in her hands. Her eyes were wide with panic and exhaustion. She had clearly not slept since the incident began 6 hours ago. "I have been reading everything we have on Vryn courtship," she said breathlessly. "This is bad. This is really, really bad." "Explain it to me slowly," Dae-hyun said, sipping his coffee like this was a normal day. Mireille sat down and started scrolling through her tablet. When a Vryn chooses a mate, they enter what is called the bonding hunt. First, they bring gifts to prove they are good providers. The gifts are usually prey they have killed. As if on cue, there was a loud crashing sound from the main hall. Everyone looked through the window. Korath had grabbed a large decorative pillar from the wall. He ripped it free with his powerful arms and dragged it across the floor toward the observation room. The pillar scraped and sparked against the metal ground. Korath dropped the pillar in front of the window and looked at Dae-hyun. His tail wagged once. "Oh no," Mireille whispered. "He brought me a gift," Dae-hyun said with delight. "Look at that. He is so proud of himself." Haejin pressed her hand against her face. "That pillar cost more than my annual salary." Korath stared at Dae-hyun, waiting. When Dae-hyun smiled and gave him a thumbs up, the predator made that rumbling sound again. The purr that everyone else thought was a threat signal. "What is the second part of the courtship?" Dae-hyun asked. "The Ana. An. Mireille scrolled down. Threat displays. The Vryn performs acts of strength and aggression to show they can protect their chosen mate from all dangers. Korath suddenly reared up on his back legs. He spread his forearms wide, making himself look even bigger. His mouth opened, showing every single razor-sharp tooth. He roared, and the sound shook the windows. It was a sound of pure, predatory power, a challenge to anything that dared approach. Several security officers in the room stumbled backward. One dropped his weapon. Haejin raised her gun with shaking hands. Dae-hyun clapped his hands together. "Wow! Good volume. Very impressive." Korath dropped back down to all 6 limbs. He moved closer to the window and pressed his face against the glass. His hot breath fogged up the surface. His amber eyes were fixed on Dae-hyun with intense focus. "Is that it?" Dae-hyun asked Mireille. "No," she said quietly. "The third part is isolation. The Vryn tries to separate their chosen mate from everyone else. They become extremely aggressive toward anyone who comes near. They will attack and kill to keep others away." "That is a problem," Haejin said. A door on the far side of the main hall opened. A small maintenance drone rolled in to clean up the debris from the destroyed pillar. It was just a robot. Mindless and automatic. Korath spun around with frightening speed. He launched himself at the drone and smashed it with one powerful strike. Metal and sparks flew everywhere. The drone was destroyed in seconds. Korath stood over the wreckage, snarling, his scales bristling. Then he looked back at Dae-hyun as if to say, "I protected you." "Oh, that poor drone," Dae-hyun said sadly. "That could have been a person," Haejin shouted. At that moment, Yoon-ho entered the room. He was a xenopsychologist. an expert on alien minds and behaviors. He had been called in from Earth as soon as the situation started. He looked tired, but determined. "I need to interview you," Yunho said to Daehyun. "I need to understand what happened and how we can resolve this safely." They moved to a private office while Heejin kept watch on Korath. The Predator paced anxiously when Daehyun left his sight, scratching at the windows and making distressed sounds. Yunho sat across from Daehyun with a recording device. "Tell me everything that happened when you first saw Korath." "He looked at me," Daehyun said simply. "He seemed curious, so I looked back. Then, everyone started panicking, which seemed like an overreaction. Did you feel threatened?" "No. Why would I?" Yunho made notes. "Because he is an apex predator, from a species known for extreme violence. So are humans," Daehyun pointed out. "We are predators too. But we learn to be civilized. Maybe the Vryn can too. It is not that simple. The Vryn do not think like us. Their entire culture is built on strength, combat, and dominance. Love, as we understand it, does not exist for them. They mate through trials of battle." Daehyun frowned. "But Korath is not fighting me. He is bringing me gifts and showing off. That is not battle. That is courtship." "Exactly. And that is what makes this unprecedented. No Vryn has ever chosen a mate outside their species. We have no records of this behavior. You might be witnessing the first case of cross-species attraction in Vryn history." There was a loud bang from the main hall. Both men rushed back to the observation room. Through the window, they saw Korath doing something strange. He was gathering pieces of debris, the destroyed pillar, broken drone parts, even decorative plants. He was arranging them in a circle in the center of the hall. "What is he doing?" Heijin asked. Mireille checked her tablet and her face went pale. "He is building a nest. Vryn build nests when they are ready to bond permanently with a mate." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the massive predator as he carefully, almost gently, arranged his collection. He used his claws to position each piece just right. When he was satisfied, he sat in the center of his nest and looked at Daehyun. "This is insane," a security officer muttered. "Command is going to order us to kill it before this goes any further." "No," Daehyun said sharply. Everyone looked at him in surprise. He was usually so calm, but now there was fire in his eyes. "Nobody is killing him. He has not hurt anyone. He destroyed a drone," Heejin reminded him. "A drone is not a person. He was protecting me from what he saw as a threat. That is not evil. That is loyalty." Yunho studied Daehyun carefully. "You really do not see him as dangerous, do you?" "I see him as a living being, trying to communicate the only way he knows how," Daehyun said. "Look at him. Really look. Yes, he is big and scary to everyone else. But to me, he just looks like someone who is lonely and wants connection." At that moment, an announcement came over the station's communication system. It was Thrix, the Reptilian Council lead, who had dealt with Vryn before. "Attention all personnel. The Vryn delegation has made contact. They are sending a cultural liaison who speaks Galactic Common. She will arrive within the hour to negotiate a resolution to this situation. Until then, maintain all security protocols. Do not approach the Vryn called Korath under any circumstances." Heijin looked at Daehyun. "You need to stay away from him until we understand what is happening." But Daehyun was not listening. He was watching Korath, who had curled up in his nest, looking somehow smaller and sadder. The great predator rested his head on his front claws. His eyes stayed on the window, on Daehyun, waiting. "He thinks I abandoned him," Daehyun whispered. "Good," Heejin said. "Maybe he will give up and leave." But even as she said it, she knew it was not true. Korath was not leaving. His eyes never wavered. His body never relaxed. He was waiting for Daehyun with the patience of a predator who had tracked prey across continents. Except Daehyun was not prey. And somehow, in a way, Nobody understood. Korath knew that. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, billions of beings watched the news feeds from Harmony's Edge. They watched the human and the hunter. They watched and wondered what would happen when two species so different tried to bridge the gap between them. Most bet on violence. A few hoped for something else. Something new. Mon. Something that might change everything. The Vryn cultural liaison arrived exactly 1 hour later. Her name was Jiwan, and she was smaller than the male Vryn, but still massive by any other species' standards. Her scales were a lighter gray, and she wore a translator device around her neck that allowed her to speak Galactic Common. She was the only Vryn who had bothered to learn other languages, which made her invaluable for situations like this. She was also clearly exhausted and stressed. The station arranged a meeting in a secure conference room. Present were Daehyun, Haejin, Yunho, Mireille, several human military officers, the insectoid Velthar ambassador, the bird-like station security captain Rilmoth, and representatives from a dozen other species. Everyone wanted answers. Jiwan entered the room, her heavy footsteps making the floor vibrate. She had to duck under the doorway. When she sat down, the specially reinforced chair groaned under her weight. She looked around at all the terrified faces, with what might have been amusement. "Let me guess," she said, her voice deep and rumbling even through the translator. "You are all afraid. Korath will destroy your station and kill everyone here." "Yes," said basically everyone at once. "He will not," Jiwan said simply. "He is in the bonding hunt. He has chosen a mate. Nothing else matters to him right now. Not violence, not territory, not even honor. Only the one he has chosen." "Why did he choose a human?" Yunho asked, taking notes. Jiwan tilted her head, studying Daehyun. "I do not know. This has never happened before. Vryn only bond with other Vryn. To choose an alien is unthinkable. It breaks every tradition we have. Can you make him stop?" The Velthar ambassador asked hopefully. "No. Once a Vryn enters the bonding hunt, they cannot be stopped. They will pursue their chosen mate until successful bonding occurs, or until death." The room went quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. "So either Daehyun accepts him, or one of them dies," Haejin said flatly. "Essentially, yes. What happens if Daehyun rejects him?" Mireille asked. Though she looked afraid of the answer, Jiwan's eyes darkened. "If the chosen mate rejects a Vryn, the Vryn will challenge them to death combat. It is a way to restore honor. The rejected mate must fight the Vryn. If they win, they earn freedom. If they lose, they die. Either way, the bonding hunt ends." Everyone turned to look at Daehyun. He was a veterinarian and diplomat, not a warrior. He would last maybe 5 seconds in combat against Korath. "There must be another option," Yunho said desperately. "There is," Jiwan said. "Accept the bond. But that comes with its own complications. A bonded mate becomes part of Vryn society. They must live with their Vryn partner, follow our laws, and adapt to our ways. It is not easy. Our world is harsh. We do not have the comforts you are used to." "What about Korath?" Daehyun asked quietly. Everyone looked at him in surprise. It was the first time he had spoken since the meeting started. "What happens to him if I reject him?" "Gradance now." Jiwan studied him carefully. "He will either die in combat with you, or, if you somehow refuse to fight, he will die of grief. Vryn, who lose their chosen mates, waste away. They stop eating, stop moving. Within weeks, they are gone." "That is barbaric," Haejin said. "That is biology," Jiwan corrected. "When a Vryn chooses, it is not a casual decision. It is a biological imperative. Every cell in his body is now bonded to the idea of Daehyun. Removing that would be like removing his heart." Daehyun stood up suddenly. "I need to see him." "Absolutely not," Rilmoth, the security captain, said immediately. It is too dangerous. He is not dangerous to me. Daehyun said firmly. He has had multiple chances to hurt me, and he has not. He brought me gifts. He built me a nest. He is trying to communicate in the only way he knows how, and I have been ignoring him for hours. That is cruel. Daehyun, think about this, Yunho said. If you go to him, he will see it as acceptance. You will be agreeing to the bond. I know. The room erupted in chaos. Everyone started talking at once, shouting, arguing. Haejin grabbed Daehyun's arm. You cannot be serious. You barely know him. He is an alien predator. This is insane. Daehyun looked at his friend with calm eyes. Haejin, I spent 10 years working with animals. I rehabilitated tigers, wolves, bears, creatures everyone said were too dangerous to save. Do you know what I learned? That when a living being reaches out for connection, you do not turn away just because it is scary. You reach back. Animals are not the same as this. No, they are not. He is smarter, more complex, more capable of understanding. That makes it even more important that I respond with kindness. Jiwon watched this exchange with intense interest. You surprise me, human. Most beings see only the danger in us. You see something else. I see someone who is lonely, Daehyun said. I see someone who chose connection over isolation, even though it goes against everything his culture taught him. That takes courage. I should show the same courage. Yunho stepped forward. If you do this, you need to understand the consequences. You will be bound to him. The Vrin bond is permanent. There is no divorce, no separation. It is for life. How long do Vrin live? Daehyun asked. About 200 years, Jiwon said. Everyone gasped. Daehyun just nodded. All right. Then we will figure it out together. You are willing to spend your entire life with a creature you met today? Mirai asked in disbelief. People have married faster for worse reasons, Daehyun said with a small smile. Jiwon stood up. Then, I will accompany you. This is a historic moment. The first cross-species Vrin bond. The elders will want detailed reports. The elders? Rilmoth asked nervously. The Elder Vrin Council. They lead our people. They are already traveling to this station. They will arrive within 3 days. This situation is too important to ignore. If this bond succeeds, it could change the future of our entire species. That statement hung in the air like a storm cloud. The implications were staggering. If Vrin could bond with other species, if they could learn to connect without violence, it would reshape galactic politics forever. Or it could create super predators and doom everyone. Nobody was sure which. They made their way to the main hall with heavy security escort. Drones followed overhead. Medical teams stood ready. Every precaution was taken. Though everyone knew it would be meaningless if Korath decided to attack. The doors opened, and Daehyun stepped into the hall. Korath was still in his nest. But the moment he saw Daehyun, everything changed. The predator's head snapped up. His eyes brightened. He scrambled to his feet, his massive body moving with surprising grace. Korath rushed toward Daehyun, and every security officer raised their weapons. Haejin screamed for Daehyun to get back, but Daehyun stood still. He held out his hand, palm forward, the universal gesture for stop. And Korath stopped. Just a few meters away, his body vibrating with restrained energy, but he stopped. He lowered his head and made a soft whimpering sound, so different from his earlier roars. Good boy, Daehyun said gently. It is okay. I am here now. He walked forward slowly. Behind him, every being in that hall held their breath. Daehyun approached Korath until he was right in front of the massive predator. Korath could have killed him with one swipe of his claws. Instead, Korath lowered his head even more, bringing it down to Daehyun's level. His glowing eyes looked into Daehyun's eyes with an intensity that was almost painful to witness. Daehyun reached out and placed his hand on Korath's scaled snout. The predator's skin was warm, rough like stone but somehow alive. Korath closed his eyes and leaned into the touch. That deep purring sound came from his chest again, but this time it was softer, gentler. "There we go," Daehyun murmured. "That is not so scary, is it? You just wanted someone to see you. Someone to understand." Korath opened his eyes. In that moment, something passed between them. An understanding that went beyond words or species. A connection that should not have been possible but somehow was. Jiwon watched from the doorway, her mouth hanging open. "Incredible," she whispered. "He is responding to gentle touch. Vryn never respond to gentle touch. We only understand strength. 17 and we have just 18 axis. Maybe you just never had anyone offer you gentleness before," Daehyun said without looking away from Korath. The great predator moved closer and carefully, so carefully, wrapped his body around Daehyun in a protective circle. His tail curled around them both. His head rested on top of Daehyun's head. To anyone watching, it looked like the predator was guarding the most precious treasure in the universe. And perhaps he was. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The human and the hunter, the impossible bond. Some called it beautiful. Others called it dangerous. But everyone watched. Everyone wondered. What happens when two species so different find common ground? What happens when fear gives way to trust? What happens when a predator learns to love? The universe was about to find out. 2 days passed in relative peace. Daehyun spent most of his time with Korath, and the predator followed him everywhere like an enormous shadow. When Daehyun ate, Korath watched. When Daehyun slept, Korath curled around him protectively. When Daehyun worked at his computer, Korath rested his massive head on the desk nearby, his amber eyes never leaving his chosen mate. The station slowly relaxed. Other delegates emerged from their safe zones. The summit tried to continue, though everyone was distracted by the unlikely pair. Daehyun became something of a celebrity. Beings from across the galaxy sent messages asking for interviews. Scientists wanted to study the bond. Philosophers debated what it meant. Jiwon stayed on the station to observe and help translate. She taught Daehyun basic Vryn body language and sounds. She was amazed at how quickly Korath adapted to Daehyun's presence. The predator learned to move more carefully, to control his strength, to be gentle with this fragile human. "He is changing," Jiwon said one afternoon, as they watched Korath carefully pick up a small datapad that Daehyun had dropped, using just the tip of one claw. "Vryn do not change. We are what we are. But he is learning softness for you. Maybe everyone can change if they have a reason to," Daehyun said. Haejin remained skeptical, but had to admit that Korath had not shown any aggression toward anyone, as long as they did not try to separate him from Daehyun. She still kept her weapon close, but she had stopped expecting disaster at every moment. Then, on the third day, everything went wrong. The alarms woke Daehyun from sleep. He sat up quickly, and Korath immediately rose to a defensive stance, his body tense, his eyes scanning for threats. Through the window of their shared quarters, they could see ships arriving. Big ships. Vryn warships. "The elders are here," Jiwon said, rushing into the room. "But they are not alone." "What do you mean?" Daehyun asked. Before she could answer, the communication system activated. A deep, challenging roar filled every speaker on the station. It was a sound of fury and dominance. Korath responded immediately with his own roar, even louder, even more fierce. His scales bristled. His claws extended fully. "What is happening?" Daehyun demanded. Jiwon looked worried, which was terrifying because she had been calm about everything else. "Sanha has come. He is Korath's rival, one of the strongest Vryn warriors. He is challenging for the right to court you." "He wants to take Daehyun?" Haejin said, raising her weapon. "No weapon you have can stop this," Jiwon said quietly. "This is Vryn law. When two warriors want the same mate, they fight. The winner earns the right to continue the bonding hunt. The loser either dies or yields. The station descended into chaos again. Emergency evacuation orders went out. Species began boarding their ships to leave. The human delegation wanted to force Daehyun onto a shuttle, but Korath blocked the doorway with his body and would not move. Jinho, a human military attaché, tried to negotiate. "We can protect you. We can get you away from here before the fight starts." "No," Daehyun said firmly. "I am not leaving Korath. Are you insane? They are going to fight to the death. You will be in danger. He is afraid," Daehyun said, pointing at Korath. The predator was pacing, his movements agitated. "Look at him. He is scared. I cannot leave him alone when he is scared." Everyone stared at him. "That thing does not get scared," Jinho said. "Everything gets scared," Daehyun replied. "Especially when they might lose someone they love." The word love hung in the air. It seemed impossible. Could a Vryn love? Could a creature of pure instinct and violence feel something so complex? So gentle? Korath turned his head and looked at Daehyun. His eyes were still fierce, still full of that predatory intensity. But there was something else there too. Something vulnerable. "I am staying," Daehyun said. "Take everyone else to safety. But I am staying." Haejin looked like she wanted to argue, but she knew Daehyun well enough to recognize when he had made up his mind. "Then I am staying too. Someone needs to make sure you do not get yourself killed." The fight was arranged in the main arena, a large open space, usually used for cultural performances. Now it would host something much more primitive. The elders arrived, 3 ancient Vryn, each one scarred and decorated with symbols of wisdom. They would witness the combat and declare the winner. Sanha entered first. He was slightly smaller than Korath but covered in fresh war paint. His scales gleamed like polished metal. His eyes burned with ambition and fury. He looked at Daehyun with possession, as if he were a prize to be won. Daehyun did not like that look at all. Korath entered from the opposite side. He moved with deadly grace, every muscle coiled and ready. When he saw Sanha, he roared, and the sound shook the arena. It was a challenge, a promise of violence. The elders spoke in deep Vryn, which Jiwon translated. 2 warriors claim the same mate. Only one may continue the bonding hunt. Fight with honor. Fight to the end. The combat began. It was brutal and terrifying. The 2 Vryn crashed together with the force of landslides. Claws tore scales. Teeth snapped at throats. Tails whipped like weapons. They moved faster than anything that size should be able to move. A blur of black scales and rage. Blood spattered the arena floor. Korath was stronger, but Sanha was faster. They were evenly matched. 2 apex predators, fighting for something more valuable than territory or food. They were fighting for connection, for the future, for the chance to be something more than just monsters. Daehyun watched from behind a protective barrier, his hands pressed against the glass. He hated this. He hated seeing Korath hurt. He hated that violence was the answer to everything in Vryn culture. Then Korath went down. Sanha had gotten lucky, found an opening, and slashed across Korath's side. The wound was deep. Dark blood poured out. Korath stumbled, his legs shaking. Sanha stood over him, victorious. He raised his head to roar his triumph. The elders moved forward to declare him the winner, and Daehyun ran into the arena. "No!" Haejin screamed, but it was too late. Daehyun had jumped over the barrier and was running across the open space toward Korath. Every Vryn froze. This was forbidden. No one interrupted a challenge combat. It was the most sacred law they had. Sanha turned toward Daehyun, confused and angry. Daehyun did not care. He dropped to his knees beside Korath and pressed his hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "You stubborn idiot," he said, his voice breaking. "Why did you have to fight? Why could you not just talk?" Korath looked up at him, those amber eyes dimming. He made a soft sound, almost apologetic. "Do not you dare die on me," Daehyun said fiercely. "Do not you dare. I did not agree to bond with you, just to watch you bleed out in some stupid arena." Sanha took a step toward them, his intentions unclear. But Korath, despite his wounds, forced himself up. He placed his body between Daehyun and Sanha, protective even in weakness. "Stop," Daehyun shouted at Sanha. "Just stop. What is wrong with you people? You think fighting solves everything? You think violence proves worth? It does not. You know what takes real strength: kindness, mercy, choosing not to fight when you could." Sanha stared at this tiny human who dared to lecture him. The arena was silent. "Korath chose me," Daehyun continued, standing up now, his hands covered in Korath's blood. "Not because I am strong, not because I can fight, because I showed him gentleness when everyone else showed him fear. That is what he wants. That is what he needs. And if you take me from him, you are not winning a prize. You are killing him just as surely as if you ripped out his heart." One of the elders spoke. Jiwon translated, her voice shaking. "The small one speaks truth. We have forgotten what bonds truly are. We made them about strength, when they should be about choice." Sanha looked at Korath, at the wounded warrior still trying to protect his mate. Then he looked at Daehyun, at this fearless human who ran into danger to save someone he barely knew. Slowly, Sanha lowered his head. It was a gesture of respect, of yielding. He had not lost the fight, but he was ending it anyway. "You would choose the wounded one over me?" Sanha asked in halting Galactic Common. "Yes," Daehyun said without hesitation. "Because he chose me first. Because he sees me as more than a trophy. Because when I look at him, I see someone worth saving." Sanha stepped back. "Then he is worthy of you." I yield. The arena erupted in shocked sounds from the watching aliens. A Vryn had yielded, without being defeated. It was unheard of. It was revolutionary. The elders conferred quickly, then made their announcement. "The challenge is ended. Korath has won through the strength of his bond, not through violence. This is a new thing. A good thing. Let it be remembered." Medical teams rushed in to treat Korath. Daehyun stayed by his side the entire time, holding his massive claw, whispering reassurances. And Korath, despite his pain, kept his eyes on Daehyun, that same look of devotion and wonder. Something had changed in that arena. Not just for Korath and Daehyun, but for all Vryn. They had seen a different kind of strength, a different path forward, and they were curious. 1 week later, Korath had healed enough to move around normally. Vryn biology was remarkable. Wounds that would have killed most species were already closing, leaving only new scars to add to his collection. But these scars were different. He bore them with pride because he had earned them protecting his bond with Daehyun. The summit had officially ended, but few delegates had left. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. The station had become a gathering place, a moment in history that nobody wanted to miss. Yoonji, the human ambassador, arrived from Earth with a team of negotiators and cultural experts. She was a stern woman with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. She had been briefed on everything that happened, but seeing Korath and Daehyun together still made her pause. They were in the common area. Daehyun sat on a specially reinforced bench, reading from a datapad. Korath lay beside him, his massive head resting on Daehyun's lap. One of Daehyun's hands absently scratched behind the ridge where Korath's ear would be, if he had ears. The predator's eyes were half closed in contentment, that purring sound rumbling through his chest. "Well," Unji said, sitting down across from them. "This is certainly something." "Hello, Ambassador," Daehyun said politely. "I suppose Earth has opinions about all this. Many opinions. Most of them concerned. Some excited. A few think you are either brilliant or insane. She studied Korath carefully. How does it work? The bond? Daehyun thought about how to explain it. It is like having a partner who communicates differently. We cannot speak the same language yet, but we understand each other. He knows when I am tired or stressed. I know when he is anxious or protective. We are learning together. Korath lifted his head and looked at Eunji. She tensed slightly, but the predator simply sniffed the air around her, gathering information. Then he returned his head to Daehyun's lap, apparently satisfied she was not a threat. May I ask you something honestly? Eunji said to Daehyun. Of course. Do you actually love him? Or are you doing this out of some misplaced sense of obligation or curiosity? It was a fair question. Daehyun was quiet for a moment, his hand still moving gently through Korath's scales. I did not plan this. I did not expect to bond with an alien predator. But love is not always something you plan. Sometimes it just happens. And yes, I think I do love him. He is loyal, protective, gentle with me, despite being capable of terrible violence. He chose me when he could have chosen anyone from his own species. That means something. Korath made a soft sound and nuzzled closer. Even without understanding the words, he understood the emotion behind them. The Galactic Coalition wants to establish new protocols, Eunji said, pulling up official documents on her pad. Cross-species bonding laws, cultural exchange programs, specific regulations for Vrin integration. This situation has opened doors that were previously locked shut. What do the Vrin want? Daehyun asked. As if summoned, Ji-won entered the room with the three elders. The ancient Vrin moved slowly, but with undeniable authority. Their scales were pale with age. Their eyes cloudy, but still sharp with intelligence. They had seen centuries of Vrin history, and now they were witnessing its transformation. The lead elder spoke in deep Vrin. Ji-won translated, "We have decided. What happened here is not an aberration. It is evolution. The Vrin have been alone too long. We have been feared and isolated. But this human showed us another way. We wish to learn this way." You want more humans and Vrin to bond? Heijin asked, shocked. She had been standing guard nearby, as always. No, Ji-won said. Not exactly. We want to learn how to bond without violence. How to connect through choice and gentleness. Korath has shown us it is possible. But he cannot teach us. He only knows what Daehyun taught him. The elder continued, and Ji-won translated. We propose a cultural exchange. Humans would come to our world, teach us about emotions, about communication, about peaceful bonding. In return, we offer our knowledge of survival, our strength, our protection to human space. We would become allies, not threats. The room fell silent. This was unprecedented. The Vrin had been the galaxy's apex predators, feared by everyone, allied with no one. Now they were asking for help, asking to change. Eunji looked at Daehyun. This would largely depend on you. You and Korath are the proof that it can work. Would you be willing to help facilitate this exchange? I have one condition. Daehyun said. Name it. No one forces anyone into bonds, Vrin or human or any species. Connections only happen through genuine choice and mutual respect. No arranged partnerships, no political matchmaking, just organic relationships. The elder made a sound that Ji-won translated as laughter. The small one continues to teach us. Agreed. Choice. Above all else. Over the next few days, the framework was established. The Vrin Accords, they called it. A treaty that would allow cultural exchange, peaceful integration, and the possibility of cross-species relationships. It was carefully worded, with protections for both species, guidelines for interaction, and councils to oversee the process. Young Vrin were already volunteering to be part of the first exchange program. They were curious about this soft bonding that Korath had discovered. They wanted to understand emotions beyond rage and combat. They wanted to learn gentleness. One young Vryn, barely out of adolescence, approached Daehyun nervously. "Teach you what?" Daehyun asked gently. "How to be good. How to be soft. Like Korath." Daehyun smiled. "It is not about being soft. It is about being strong enough to be kind. Korath is still a warrior. He is still powerful. But he chooses when to use that power. That is real strength." The young Vryn processed this, his head tilted in that curious way. Korath approached and spoke to him in their language. The younger Vryn listened carefully, then bowed his head in respect. "He learns fast," Ji-won said, watching. "They all do. Vryn are not stupid. We just never had an example of a different way to be. Now we do." Haejin stood next to Daehyun as they watched more Vryn interact with humans and other species. The predators were awkward, uncertain, but trying. They were making an effort to control their strength, to communicate carefully, to be something other than what they had always been. "You really did it," Haejin said quietly. "You changed an entire species by treating one of them like a dog." Daehyun laughed. "I did not change them. I just showed them they could change themselves if they wanted to. Evolution is not just about biology. It is about choice." The summit finally concluded with a ceremony celebrating the Vryn Accords. Representatives from every species signed the treaty. It was a historic moment, broadcast across the galaxy. The predators and the prey, standing together. The hunters and the hunted, choosing peace. Korath stood beside Daehyun during the ceremony, wearing a special translator device that Ji-won had designed for him. It was the first time he would speak to Daehyun in words, rather than just sounds and gestures. When the ceremony ended, they returned to their quarters. Daehyun sat on the edge of the bed, exhausted from all the politics and negotiations. Korath settled beside him, his massive form taking up most of the room. "Daehyun," Korath said through the translator. His voice was deep and rough but unmistakably his. Daehyun looked up in surprise. "You can talk now?" "Yes." "Learn. For you." Korath paused, searching for words. "I want say. Thank you. You see me. Not monster. Not weapon. You see Korath." Tears stung Daehyun's eyes. He reached up and placed his hand on Korath's face, feeling the warmth of scales beneath his palm. "I see you. I always saw you. I choose you. Every time, choose you. I choose you too," Daehyun whispered. Korath carefully wrapped his body around Daehyun, protective and gentle. The great predator, who had terrified an entire station, now held his mate with tenderness that no one would have believed possible. Outside, the galaxy watched and wondered. On Earth, people debated what it meant. On 100 worlds, beings discussed the implications. The Vryn were changing. Humans had once again proven their strange ability to befriend anything, even apex predators. But in that quiet room, none of the politics mattered. There was only a human and a Vryn, two beings who should never have connected, but did. Two souls who found each other across the vast impossibility of space and said, "Yes. You. I choose. You." Months later, Daehyun received a message from Mireille. She had been assigned to the Vryn homeworld as part of the cultural exchange. The message included a video. It showed young Vryn playing with human children in a carefully supervised environment. The predators were gentle, careful with their claws and their strength. The children laughed and climbed on them like they were living jungle gyms. Parents from both species watched, nervously, but hopefully. One young Vryn was doing the head tilt that Korath had made famous. A little human girl scratched behind his auditory ridge, and the Vryn's eyes closed in contentment. He made a purring sound. "You started something beautiful," Mireille said in the message. "They call him Korath the Bridgemaker now. The one who connected two worlds. And it all started because you treated a predator like a dog." Daehyun showed the video to Korath. The great warrior watched intently, his eyes brightening with something that might have been pride. Good, Korath said simply. Young ones learn. Better future. Yes, Daehyun agreed, leaning against his mate's warm side. A better future. Daehyun have day. Daehyun have day. Outside their window, stars glittered in the endless black. Somewhere out there, other species were watching humanity with new eyes. The humans who had domesticated wolves 10,000 years ago were now domesticating the galaxy's most feared predators. Not through force or domination, but through kindness, patience, and the simple act of seeing monsters as friends waiting to be made. Korath nuzzled Daehyun's hair, that rumbling purr filling the room, and Daehyun smiled, scratching behind his mate's auditory ridge. Good boy, he murmured. Best boy in the whole galaxy. And across the stars, in 1,000 different languages, beings who had once been enemies began to wonder. If they can change, can we? If humans can bridge the gap between predator and prey, between violence and peace, what other impossible things might become possible? The answer, written in the bond between a human and a Vryn, was simple. Everything. With patience, kindness, and the courage to see others as they could be rather than as they are, everything was possible. The predator had chosen his mate. Everyone had panicked except the human who thought he was a dog. And in doing so, they changed the galaxy forever.